Imagine going to work and sitting down at a meeting where you're discussing ideas, and every idea is not only accepted as potentially useful, but also supported by everybody in the room. Imagine working in that culture. How would that make you feel? Supported, creative. That's the kind of place I want to work. And that's why I'm here today, because I've worked at workplaces that are the polar opposite of that. And I want to change that. Now, I worked at a place in New York where it was one of those places where management would come into the room and you would want to leave out the other door. Have you ever worked for a boss that seems like they are going out of their way to make your job difficult? Yeah, that's who I worked for. And one particularly stressful shift, a tray full of drinks broke all over the floor in the kitchen. And everyone stopped for just a moment and then let out a collective laugh. It was that tension breaker that we needed to ease the stress of the evening. But then the manager comes bursting in the room, red in the face, and he just goes, "This is not the time or place to laugh." I worked at a comedy club. By definition, that is the time and place to laugh. And it was at that moment where I went from actively searching for another job to, that was kind of ironic. And then I imagined my boss as a character from a sitcom. So every time he would burst through the door, I would imagine like Kramer coming into the room, thinking, what kind of wacky antics is he going to get into this week? And it changed my perspective of him, because instead of dreading seeing him, I would look forward to what he would do next. Because we are all human beings. We all make mistakes. Life isn't perfect. Life itself is absurd, and in those absurdities comes comedy. And because I changed my perspective of him, I changed my body language without even realizing that. Because I was looking forward to seeing him, I would approach him differently. Suddenly, he started saying hi back when I would say hi to him in the hallways. Pretty soon, we forged a connection. This guy was a grizzled post office veteran who had retired from there and somehow found his way managing a comedy club. Didn't seem to make sense. Hard-nosed, tough as nails, loved Broadway musicals. Who knew that his favorite musical was Kinky Boots? But we forged that connection. I like Broadway myself. He's a fan of the New York Jets. I'm a fan of the Cleveland Browns. We shared in our misery. So it changed the whole relationship. It changed the whole dynamic of the relationship. And then one day, he called me into his office. So I'm thinking, oh, great. I thought we were past this. I thought we were buds. I'm going to get in trouble. Oh, man. He sits me down and he goes, the club is looking for new programming. We've been doing only stand-up for years, and it's great, but we're looking to inject some ingenuity in the shows that we do. I know that you do sketch comedy, David, and I would like to offer you a chance to pitch to the booker. So I said, well, hell yeah, I'm in, 100%. So I pitched the show. The show got picked up. We sold out the first one. We were accepted into the New York Comedy Festival, all because my boss said, this is not the time or place to laugh in the exact place where you're supposed to laugh. It changed my perspective of him. And I thought to myself, well, isn't that what comedy is? It's just a different way of looking at the same thing that we're all looking at. It's a different angle on things. And when we laugh, it's our brain's way of saying, haven't looked at it that way before. And it totally changed my perspective on work. So I thought, how can we incorporate that into the workplace? So I started doing speaking presentations at conferences, and I was speaking at one particular conference. I'd just gotten off stage, and I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. It was an email from a gentleman named Bruce, who happened to be at this conference. Now, he had booked me to speak at a later conference. So when I got the email, I thought, great. I bet he's emailing me because he's so excited for me to present to his group. What the email said was, we are going to rescind our request to have you come speak to our group. Blew my mind, because at the time, people were telling me, oh, it was a great presentation. You were funny. We swear. So, thinking I did a great job. But then I get this email, and I'm like, what's wrong with Bruce? Come on, Bruce, get with it. Get this. He calls me wildly unprofessional at the end. Me? Wildly unprofessional? Like, I get the unprofessional, fine. But you didn't need to use the adverb. That's just rubbing salt in an open wound. Now, what I was trying to do with this presentation was get people excited about going to work by making them uncomfortable with the status quo. So why was I surprised when people were actually uncomfortable with my presentation? So I took a step back and I thought, well, maybe Bruce is right in a way. Maybe I shouldn't have tried to get people uncomfortable at first. Maybe I shouldn't have opened the presentation as a character named Detective Dick Ransom and then very liberally used his first name. The message of this character was personal accountability. See, Detective Dick is a former NYPD detective who lost his job because every single case that he was assigned to, he traced it back to himself. The message makes sense, but it was the use of the first name and me saying, we all have a little inside of us. That's the response that I got. Well deserved. Well deserved. And, know your audience, David. Not many people at an HR conference are expecting to hear that message. There aren't many 12-year-old boys in HR, so it didn't work. So instead of getting people uncomfortable at the very beginning of the presentation, I'm going to do that now because the status quo is as follows. Only 1 in 3 Americans, according to the Gallup State of the American Workplace, is engaged by their work. And these actively disengaged employees are costing companies like the ones that you all work for $450 to $550 billion a year. That's a lot of money. And then I would continue on with the presentation based off of other scary impacts of things like workplace stress, which is a result of active disengagement in work. For example, the American Psychological Association reported that a quarter of adults reported extreme levels of stress. A poll of 3,000 people found that half of them reported missing work because of work-related stress. And the American Institute of Stress estimates that the workplace stress costs U.S. employers more than $300 million a year. This gets better. According to the book Dying for a Paycheck, workplace environments may be responsible for 120,000 excess deaths per year, making workplaces the 5th leading causes of death. That's invigorating, right? This means more people are dying from stressful work environments than diabetes, influenza, Alzheimer's, kidney disease. And then I would tell my audiences to go, don't be stressed. That didn't work. Can't see that on a motivational poster, right? Hang that one around the office. So disengagement is a problem that many companies are facing, but not a lot of companies are combating in a way that's working. Because that Gallup State of the American Workplace, 1 out of 3, that's only fluctuated from 29 to 34% between 2000 and today. So we've been treading water on this for years. It's time to make a change. My idea is to lead with laughs. Raise your hand if you like to laugh. If you're not raising your hand, I assume you're eating, so that's fine. Now, I want you to take a moment, and I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to put your wallet on the table in front of you and give it 10 minutes or else this exercise won't work. Now, seriously, though, close your eyes. And I want you to think back to the last time you really, really laughed, like let out a belly laugh. I mean, to the point that you couldn't breathe, that you felt like you were about to cry, that your face hurt from laughing so much. Think back to that moment, which to me is right now. This is every single time that I do this, a phone goes off. I don't know if there's somebody following me with a phone that's like, one time it was the Sonar ringtone. Anyway, so close your eyes and really picture yourself in that moment. Who were you with? What was funny? Was it something your kids did? Was it something on TV? Was it something someone said? Was it something you did? And I want you to really feel that feeling that you get when you laugh. That burst of energy that comes out from your heart and it just expands throughout your entire body. And I want you to open your eyes. I want you to look at somebody that is at the table with you. I want you to make eye contact with someone at your table. And for the next 90 seconds, I want you to laugh like you did in that moment. 1, 2, 3. I'm kidding, don't do that. Don't, this is, no. Could you imagine doing that for 90 whole seconds? Now that gets the same response every time I do it. And I just want you to think, what if you could walk into work every morning knowing that at any moment you could feel that feeling, but also get your work done? I mean, let's be honest, we go to work for a reason. We can. And that's why I started this program. Now, when I say lead with laughs, people always give me a look. It's not about being funny. It's not about telling jokes. It's about creating a culture that is open to creativity, to connecting with other people, to collaborating with other people, and to just having good vibes when you walk into work. I don't want people walking into work stressing out about it, because laughter really does help us become more creative. And knowing that we can laugh at anything that goes wrong or anything that our boss does or anything that we do really frees up our creativity. Now, why is work the way it is? I remember when I was a kid doing homework at the kitchen table. I was about 8 years old, watching all my friends play outside. I wasn't allowed to go outside until my homework was done. My dad came in from work and I looked at him and I said, "Dad, I hate school. I can't wait until I'm done with school so I never have to do homework again." And he laughed because he knew something I didn't. And then he said something I will never forget. He looked me in the eye and he said, "David, be grateful you're still in school, because once you graduate college, for the next 40 years, you're going to work at a job that you don't care about, for a boss who doesn't care about you, with people you don't like." Real uplifting, Dad. That's something you could put on a motivational poster. And I thought, I don't want that for myself. What if we could change things? What if we could do that? Because this is something now that is ingrained in our culture. Because I grew up in a pretty average household. I remember my parents getting home from work, being stressed out, not wanting to engage in anything, just turning on the TV, making dinner, and then the next morning doing it all over again. That blew my mind. So I thought, what if I could do something different? Now my question was, where did this all come from? Because in order to change things, we have to start from where we are. And where we are is brought to you by my presentation sponsor, the Industrial Revolution. It still impacts American workplaces today, because it was all about meeting quotas then. But now, in this modern era with new technologies taking those basic jobs where people are turning knobs. Imagine getting a resume from an applicant where their only qualification was turns knobs well. That wouldn't work today. Because now, robots are taking those jobs. Automation is taking those jobs. Those jobs are being shipped overseas. We are looking for people to be more creative, a more human work experience. We need people to innovate, yet we are demonizing those people that come to work that march to the beat of a different drum. Now, what if you could lean in to that eccentricity? What if you could lean into the uniqueness of those people who come to work who are a little bit eccentric, a little bit outside of the box the way they think? Now, that doesn't mean to actually come to work with a drum. That's not what I'm going with there. Jack Welch from GE, and I love this quote: "If the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near." Now, this isn't meant to scare you. This is meant to make you think of maybe a new way to incorporate humor into the workplace. And we're going to get into that in just a moment, because again, doing this doesn't involve necessarily laughing or telling jokes, but it does involve creating a culture that is open to creativity, to leaning into your people. And people love to laugh. And when we laugh, we feel good. And who here works better when they feel good? None of you? I like going to work just miserable and hating. No. We all work better when we feel good. We see the bigger picture. And there are positive impacts of incorporating humor into the workplace. And this is the science portion of the program. Some of the benefits of incorporating humor into the workplace. According to a 2007 University of Missouri study, people who use humor in their day-to-day work are more productive. They're more effective at communicating with their coworkers, and they form a psychological connection with their workplace, meaning they find meaning in their work. In that same study, they found that leaders who use a sense of humor to engage their employees were more effective at motivating them. They were better at communicating with them, and they were a key cog in reducing stress. But remember, work isn't the time or place to laugh. According to a Bell Leadership Institute survey of 3,300 employees across all different forms of jobs, they found that the two most desirable qualities in leaders were a strong work ethic and a sense of humor. Meaning you get your job done, but you can also find ways to have fun doing it. But work isn't the time or place to laugh. And this impacts the company bottom line, too, because according to a Hewitt and Associates study, companies who used humor in engaging their employees showed increased shareholder returns of 19% compared to similar companies in the same field. But work isn't the time or place to laugh. And there are numerous health benefits we can get from laughing. We've all heard the phrase, laughter is the best medicine. That doesn't mean stop taking your actual medicine, but it does mean being open for humor in the workplace, because the side effects of humor just keep going and going and going. And the bottom line, and if you are a manager or a business owner, you'll like this. This all means fewer sick days. Because the more we laugh, the more we feel better. It combats stress. It combats the cortisol that is released into our bodies by stress with dopamine. But work isn't the time or place to laugh. And humor in the workplace makes us more creative, too. Because in a University of Maryland study, they took two groups of people, showed one group comedy videos, and didn't show the other group anything. And they set them to work solving the same insight problems. At the end of the day, the group that was shown comedy videos solved their problems at a rate of 58% versus the 30% of the other group. Because humor helps us see outside of the box. But work isn't the time or place to laugh. So how can we incorporate humor into our workplace? How can we make this a part of our culture? Number one, do not make it mandatory, because you can't yell at people to laugh. That doesn't help, that doesn't make them want to laugh. Trust me, I learned this when I first started doing stand-up. If an audience isn't laughing at a joke, you can't tell them, well, this is funny. I thought this is funny. This is your fault. Stop being so uptight. This is a PC culture. Write better jokes, David. That's what I learned. Don't make it mandatory. If you want to engage your people in this, there are some people that might be resistant to it. That's who they are. That's perfectly fine. So don't make it mandatory. The second, focus on positive humor styles. So if you're going to incorporate humor in the workplace, make sure it's uplifting rather than bringing other people down. This isn't a Comedy Central roast. So before you use humor into your day-to-day workplace experience, ask yourself these questions. Does it laugh with people or at them? Does it reduce tension? Does it ramp it up? Does it tear down walls or does it build barriers? Does it unite or divide? And does it spur the creative process or does it cut down ideas? Or just the basic question, is this going to make the other person's day better or not? If not, probably don't tell that joke. The third guideline, laugh at yourself. We all make mistakes. We all mess up, just like with that conference. Because I was able to laugh at myself, you'll notice that I did not open this presentation as a character. Learned from that. But this also does other things as well. When you laugh at yourself, it helps build trust between you and other people, because it shows that you can make mistakes. And if we want people to be more creative and more innovative at work, we want them to take risks. And if they're worried about what happens when they take a risk, the chances of them doing that are going to be lower. So in that exercise at the very beginning that we did, if you said the CBD potato chips, and I said, no, that's too far, we're not going to go there today, the next idea, you might be a little bit more hesitant to shout out at me because there's a chance I would shoot it down. But instead, I accepted your idea, and then we added to it. When we're able to laugh at ourselves, we build that trust. We get people to come to us with ideas versus just complaints. It inspires others to take risks, and it makes you more human. It makes you a little more approachable. If people can see you laugh at yourself, dust yourself off, do something different, and overcome that problem, it sends a better subconscious message than if you were to try to cover your bases. And I did a presentation in the small town of Downey, Idaho. Has anybody heard of Downey, Idaho? I don't think the people in Downey, Idaho have either. There was a population of about 600, and I agreed to speak to their Chamber of Commerce. And my contact with that group said, I will put flyers all over the town. I will push this. I will promote it. Everybody's so excited to have you. Every time we corresponded with one another, she was talking about how so many people were going to come. They rented out the middle school gym for my program. It was filled with chairs. I got there early. I was ready to rock and roll. And then it was time for the presentation, and there were 3 people in the room. My contact, a teacher who was on his lunch break at that school, and a 92-year-old woman with 52 grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. I'm not sure how she found this, but she was there. And I was angry. You said you were promoting this. You said the town was excited. You said everybody was going to be there. You rented out the gym. What happened? What did you do wrong? But then I took a step back and I thought, David, you could have easily done something to help get people excited too. So ever since then, I now offer to send a quick little video to each group that I speak to kind of get people excited about it. I mean, I put the ball back into my court. At that moment, I shook that anger off. I looked at the 3 people in front of me, and we had a little back and forth presentation because you can't just lecture 3 people. It's like they are in trouble or something. And ever since that presentation, and even before that presentation, I had never hugged my entire audience. The 4th guideline: create shared experiences. You ever watched a comedy by yourself and you laugh a little bit, but if you're in a room full of people who are laughing, that laughter is magnified, right? Because laughter is one of the most authentic human experiences we can have. It's our subconscious just letting loose a physiological reaction in response to neural connections in our brain. And I won't bog you down with the jargon, but basically what laughing does as a group, especially if you work together, is when you are with your boss and you are laughing at the same thing, you're no longer employee and boss anymore. You're just 2 humans that think the same thing is funny. And that builds morale, that builds trust, and that makes people want to create more of those positive experiences with one another. And ways to do that: you can create fun workplace rituals. Somebody gets a promotion in your workplace, have a knighting ceremony. That's way more fun than a round of applause for so-and-so who just got promoted, and then you go on with your day. Or at the end of the quarter, you can have a celebration, a ritual. Turn off all the lights in the office. Light a bunch of candles, put on Gregorian chants, and march through the office together as a group, as like a sort of pagan ritual, just for fun. It's these little shared experiences that you can have together that completely change the workplace. Now, you might not want to go with those ideas. You know your workplace better than I do, but the idea is the same. Come together and create things together. Schedule themed days. Now, casual Friday is pretty commonplace, where you wear jeans to work. I'm talking more active themed days. For example, Third Person Thursday, where for an entire workday, once a month, you refer to yourself in the third person. By the end of the day, I mean, it's silly, right? But by the end of the day, everybody's laughing together. It's just a fun shared experience, and it's a culture builder. David thinks that's a good idea. Host fun contests and projects. We all have the ability to make pretty high-quality videos on our phone. So for example, if you release a new product, a new service, a new anything in your workplace, have your people come together and make a 30-second video, a 30-second short, kind of making fun of how good that product or that idea is together. It brings people together in a project, and if you have that yes and attitude with it, it's a lot of fun. Make meetings memorable. Raise your hand if you've been to a meeting in the past month or so that could have been an email. A lot of you, okay. We've all been there. Now meetings, there's a lot of wasted time in meetings. So to reduce this, make your meetings a little bit more memorable. Think outside of the box. For example, remove the chairs. You'll get to the point pretty quick. Give everybody a 16-ounce glass of water at the beginning of the meeting, and when the first person leaves to go to the bathroom, meeting adjourned. Get to the point. Just little things like that. Start with an improv exercise like we did at the beginning. Show a comedy video. Based off that University of Maryland study, it allows people to be a little bit more creative, especially if it's a meeting where you're coming together to solve a problem. Start meetings on a positive note, create positive energy, and then get down to business. But most importantly, give your team the freedom to pitch these ideas. We want to make this inclusive. Create a humor department that comes together once a month without any guidance from management to come and pitch ideas, fun ideas, probably more fun than a pagan march through the office. Have them come together, and the most important idea here is to give everyone a chance to share their ideas. They might not have good ideas at first, but with a little bit of coaching up, a little bit of accept and add, a little bit of that improvisational technique, you might create a great idea that impacts positively the culture of your organization in a number of weeks to months. And there are no right or wrong answers, just like with the potato chip. Accept others' ideas and add. Because that is the power of yes and, which is the core rule of improv. Has anybody here ever taken an improv class before? Okay, one of you? Oh, a couple of you. Okay, cool. Better question. Has anyone here seen the show Whose Line Is It Anyway? That was one of my favorite shows growing up. And I remember when I was a kid thinking there is no way that they don't know these prompts before they get on stage. They're too good. It's too funny. Until I took my first improv class, and I learned that yes and is that core rule. Now, while you might get on stage as an improviser and think that I'm going to be a robot pirate from space and this is going to be hilarious, and then the other person comes to the stage and they go, Mr. President, your wife is missing. I'm the president, and we've got to find my wife. Because if I would have stayed a robot pirate from space, it would have taken the audience out of it, it would have taken the rest of the team out of it, and we'd have to dig ourselves out of this hole. But instead, we foster this culture of support and coming together to create something from nothing. That is what the yes and rule does. So in summation, when it comes to incorporating humor in the workplace, you know your workplace better than I do. But if you stick to these guidelines, you can create new ideas, new ways to bring people together and make work the time and place to laugh and make it a little bit more unprofessional. Because that's the goal. Because if 1 out of 3 people are engaged at work and that's considered professional, consider me unprofessional. Maybe think outside of the box a little bit when you go back to the office today or tomorrow or whenever. What are some ways where you can incorporate humor into work? Right now, does anybody have any questions about anything I've gone over? Any stories? Yes?
Did you get paid for showing up in Downey, Idaho? And if you did, were you ashamed to keep the money?
I did not get paid. I actually had a gig booked in Boise. Downey was about 2 hours away, so I thought if I was going to be out there, I would try to get on stage as much as possible. So I did not get paid, thankfully, and if I did, I would have felt terrible keeping the money. I would have probably distributed it amongst the 3 people who were there. Thanks for coming. Yeah. Anyone else? Questions? Ideas? Yes.
Do you do this for a living? Do you go to companies and try to help them incorporate humor?
Yes, I started Water Cooler Comedy with that idea. I want to find new ways to connect with organizations, whether that's as a speaker, whether that is by coming to a meeting on a Monday morning and getting people going with improv exercises and kind of setting the tone for the week. There's an infinite number of ways to make people laugh. Those are the ones that I'm kind of honing in on. I also do produce corporate comedy shows as well, because if you can bring a spotlight and some speakers into the office instead of wasting an hour on a meeting and create some laughs and some positive momentum in the workplace, it sets the tone, it really does. And it really allows people the freedom mentally to be creative and think outside of the box. You first.
How do you overcome barriers to say, a corporation or an individual office to bringing humor in?
Well, you've been smiling the whole time, so that's where it starts. It's just bringing that energy first and foremost. It's also important to find the other people that kind of share that point of view, and you can come together and kind of get the ball rolling, because there is a lot of resistance to that. I mean, that's a 150-year-old management style that still is very prevalent in the workplace. So just by coming together and showing that you can have fun while getting your job done and kind of creating that bubble around you, or not that bubble, that was the wrong word, just like kind of an aura around you and the others who are also sharing that same mindset. It sets the tone and it makes people want to be around you. So start there. You can't go from 0 to 100. Just be like, sit down with your boss and say, hey, I have all these ideas. But it's those little daily practices that over time kind of build, people want to be around the person that's smiling at work. So. Right. Right, and if you can show those people that are higher up that this is beneficial, if they're a good leader, they'll listen.
What's the funniest moment that you've experienced in doing this? And second question, is your dad still unhappily employed?
Actually, no. My dad, he owns a home health care or a home care company now, so he's found meaning in his work rather than just going to work for somebody else. So he, thought outside of the box a little bit in that case. And as far as the funniest thing that's happened, I mean, I like to laugh at myself. I try to share those things. As far as being on stage, you're asking? Or?
Whatever you choose.
Man, the funniest thing that's happened, I would definitely have to say the Detective Dick Ransom thing, the Bruce email. At first, I was mad. There were so many things working against me at that moment, though. I was in Minneapolis. It was January. It was negative 20 degrees, because if you're going to go to Minneapolis, go at the most Minneapolis time of year. And you want to be like the locals. And it was while the Vikings were playing the Saints in the playoffs. Do you remember that game a few years ago where the Vikings won on the last play of the game? And during the presentation, yeah, it was beautiful. Vikings fan?
The only one from Minnesota.
Oh. Noted. But yeah, everybody was on their phone throughout the presentation. And so I'm on stage treading water, and I hadn't learned how to kind of roll with what the crowd was giving me at that point. I was still pretty green. And in hindsight, it was one of those things where, in hindsight, it was very funny. At the time, I was sweating, and then I got that email. So, but yeah, in hindsight, that's probably my favorite moment. It was a turning point for me.
So it's funny now, but it wasn't that.
Right. Right, and that's important too. That's another thing that I failed to mention, because I mean, when we're in the thick of conflict or dealing with a difficult person, it's not funny at the time. But if you're able to take that step, because you realize, that moment where it's like, oh, someday I'll be able to sit back and laugh, look back and laugh at this, and just knowing that opportunity is there kind of changes how you approach any situation. So. Cool. All right.